You've heard this story 100 times. The son who ran away. The son who wasted everything. The son who came crawling back. That's the story most people know. But that's not the real story. Because the main character isn't the son. It never was. Before we go into the text, I need to speak to someone. You left. Maybe not physically. Maybe not in a way you'd announce to anyone. But somewhere along the way, in a moment or over years, you took a step away from God and kept walking. And then the distance became the default. And then the default just became life. Now there's a part of you wondering if it's too late, if the gap has gotten too wide, if something has expired inside you that you can't get back. You don't feel clean enough to come back. You don't feel worthy enough to be received. You rehearse what you'd say, and even the rehearsal feels inadequate. Stay with me through this entire video, because what the Father does in this story is going to answer the question you've been asking, directly, completely. He's been watching the road. He saw you first. Let's go in. Why Jesus told this story. Luke 15. Jesus is eating with sinners, tax collectors, failures, people who had publicly disqualified themselves from religious life, and the Pharisees were furious. They said it out loud. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So Jesus told a story. Not to comfort the room, not as a gentle illustration, he told it as a direct answer to an accusation. And by the end, the people who started the conversation were no longer watching the story from the outside. They were in it. Here's what the son actually said. "Father, give me my share of the estate." That sounds like an impatient teenager asking for money early. It wasn't. In first-century Jewish culture, inheritance was distributed at one moment, and one moment only, after the father died. So when the son walked up and said those words, the crowd listening knew exactly what he meant. "Father, I wish you were dead." Not as exaggeration, not as metaphor. Functionally, legally, relationally, he was saying, your life is an obstacle between me and what I want. Any ordinary father would have beaten him, or thrown him out with nothing. Both were acceptable, both were expected. But Jesus says, the father divided his property between them. He gave it to him, no fight, no conditions, no lecture. And the crowd listening knew this was not how fathers behaved. The father was rewriting the rules from the very first verse. The son took everything, liquidated it, left the village, left his people, left his identity. In that culture, you were not just an individual. You were an extension of your father, a carrier of the family name, a link in a chain that had meaning and weight. The son wasn't just leaving home. He was cutting that chain. He went to a distant country, spent everything. A famine hit. And then he ended up feeding pigs. If you know anything about Jewish culture, you understand what that sentence means. He had fallen as far as a Jewish young man could possibly fall. No money, no friends, no dignity, envying the food he was shoveling to animals. The text says, no one gave him anything. That's the end of every road that leads away from the Father. Sin always promises community, it always delivers isolation. When he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's servants have more than enough food, and here I am starving?" That phrase, when he came to himself, the Greek underneath it is eis healton de elthon. Literally, he came into himself, not came to his senses in the casual way we say it. He came back into himself. He had been living outside his own identity, outside the person he was made to be. And in the mud and the hunger and the silence, something clicked. He remembered who he was. He remembered who his father was, and he decided to go home. But notice what he was going home to do. He wasn't going home to be reconciled. He was going home to negotiate. His rehearsed speech ended with, "Make me like one of your hired servants." That word, hired servant, the Greek is mistios. A mistios wasn't a household slave who lived inside the family. He was a day laborer, an independent contractor, someone who lived outside the house, worked for wages, and had no claim on the family relationship. The son wasn't asking to come home. He was asking for a job, still thinking in the language of debt, of earning, of working his way back. He was about to learn the father had a completely different vocabulary. Here's where it gets important. When a Jewish son lost his inheritance among Gentiles and had the audacity to come back, the community had a formal response. It was called the kizaza, the cutting off. Jewish tradition recorded that when someone shamed their family this way, the elders would fill a large clay pot with burned nuts and corn. They'd carry it to where the returning son was standing, and they'd smash it at his feet. As the shards scattered, they'd declare, "So-and-so is cut off from his people. No welcome, no second chance, no relationship." Every single person listening to Jesus knew this ritual. So when this son appeared on the road home, he wasn't walking into an awkward reunion. He was walking into a public execution of his identity. He expected a broken pot. And the father knew that too, which is exactly why the father was watching the road. His father saw him. Stop there. You cannot see someone from a long way off unless you are already looking. The father was already looking. Every morning, before the servants, before the older son, before the work began, he walked to the edge of the property, the place where the road bent and you could see it for a long stretch, and he stood there. Days, weeks, months, the same empty road. Until one morning, it wasn't empty. And the Bible says, the father ran. In the ancient Middle Eastern world, dignified men did not run. Not ever, not for anything. To run, a man would have to gather the front of his robes, hike them up, and expose his bare legs in public. That was humiliating, shameful, undignified in a way everyone watching would remember. A respected village elder would never do that, but this father did. He raced through the village, robes up, legs exposed, in full view of every neighbor, every servant, every person watching from their doorstep. Why? Because he was racing to get there first. Before the elders could grab their clay pot, the father was already there, already weeping, already holding his son, already kissing him. You cannot break the pot on a man being held by his father. He didn't just run to welcome his son. He ran to take the shame before the village could deliver it. He absorbed the humiliation, so his son wouldn't have to. And there's one more word in this verse we cannot skip. His father saw him and was filled with compassion. That word, compassion. The Greek is splanknidzomai, splanknidzomai. It's one of the most visceral words in the entire New Testament. It doesn't mean sympathy. It doesn't mean warmth. It describes a physical reaction, deep in the gut, a convulsion of emotion so intense it's almost painful. The same word is used when Jesus sees a widow weeping over her dead son, when a Samaritan finds a beaten man bleeding in a ditch. It's a father who sees his son on the road and feels it in his stomach. Everything else, the running, the robes, the public scene, all of it flows from that one gut reaction, splanknidzomai. The sight of his son broke something open in him that the distance had been holding shut, and he ran. Drop a comment right now. Tell me which part hit you hardest. The running, the kizaza, the splanchnizmai. I read every single one. And if this is the kind of teaching you want every week, subscribe. This is what we do here. All right, let's finish this. The son had a speech ready. He'd rehearsed it the whole way home. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." He got to line 2. The father interrupted him. "Quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet." 3 objects, each one deliberate. The best robe reserved for honored guests, for celebration, for the highest dignity the house could offer. He covered the shame with the finest thing he had. The ring, not a decoration, a signet ring, was the seal of the family, used to conduct official business, authenticate documents. When Pharaoh wanted to hand Joseph authority over all of Egypt, he put his own ring on Joseph's hand. The father was saying in front of witnesses, "You have authority in this family again. You are my son." And then the sandals. Servants went barefoot. Sons wore sandals. The son's rehearsed speech ended with, "Make me like one of your hired servants." He never got to say it. The father put sandals on his feet before the words came out. God answers prayers that haven't been prayed yet. The calf that was already fattened. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. That word, fattened, means someone had been feeding it deliberately, specifically, keeping it ready for a celebration that hadn't happened yet. Who was feeding that calf while the son was in the mud with the pigs? The father. He'd been preparing the feast before he knew the guest was coming, feeding that calf on hope alone. That's what the father looked like while the son was wasting everything. Not angry, not waiting with crossed arms, getting ready. Most sermons spend 1 minute here, but this is where Jesus lands the sharpest blade. The older son came home from the fields and heard music. He called the servant, asked what was happening, and when he found out, he refused to go in. Listen to what he actually said. "All these years I've been slaving for you, never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. Slaving, never disobeyed, you never gave me." This is a son who had been home the entire time, and he experienced it as labor, not as sonship, as slavery. And here's a detail that cuts even deeper. He doesn't call him my brother. He calls him this son of yours. He had already severed the relationship in his own mind. He wasn't just outside the party, he was outside the family. Here's the thing the crowd never expected. The younger son was lost in a far country. The older son was lost in the front yard. One ran away in rebellion. One stayed home in performance. Both were prodigal. And the father went out to him too. So his father went out and pleaded with him. He left the celebration, left the music, left the feast, and walked into the dark to find the son who refused to come in. Grace moves first every single time. You thought this was a story about the son who ran away. It's not. It's a story about the father who ran toward him. That word prodigal doesn't mean one who runs away. It doesn't mean one who comes back. It means lavishly extravagant, recklessly generous, wildly excessive in giving. The son was wasteful with things, but the father? The father was prodigal with love. He gave his inheritance to a son who wished him dead. He raced through a village and exposed himself to public humiliation. He interrupted a confession to put robes and rings on filthy hands. He slaughtered an animal he'd been fattening in faith. He left his own party to go find the son who refused to enter. That's the God in this story. Not waiting for you to earn your way back, not standing at a distance with a ledger, running. The story ends without resolution. Jesus never told us what the older son decided. He was still standing outside, arms crossed. The father had gone out and pleaded with him. And the story just stops. That's not an accident. Jesus ended it open because the Pharisees were standing right there, faithful by their own accounting, refusing to go in. He left it open because the question was still directed at them, and it is still directed at you. If you left, in whatever form that took, the Father is already on the road. He doesn't need your speech to be perfect. He interrupted the son's speech before it was finished. You don't negotiate your way back. You just turn and walk toward home. And the moment you appear on the horizon, the one who has been watching the road will see you and run. If you've been here the whole time, but it's felt like labor more than love, you are always with him. Everything he has is yours. You've been slaving for what was already given to you. Stop standing outside. Come in. The Father has already left the party. He's not waiting for you to fix yourself. He never stopped watching, and the road is shorter than it looks.